Hello, strangelings. So yesterday I was kind of, doing some recouping, and thinking, and I kind of got to thinking that this week, or at least when I'm recording it, I kind of left you guys with the idea that there's really no God. And I say that because for those of you who didn't watch last week's video, go check it out, guys. Come on. But for a little cliff notes, I essentially made the argument that based on the Abrahamic God and the idea that is proposed by the religious text itself, that God snapped into existence out of nothingness, that in fact that idea, one, makes it so that you basically preclude the possibility that there is only monotheism, that no other gods exist. Because if one entity can do this, then statistically more entities can do this, and statistically the more often it happens, the more often it will happen. Exponentially. And two, that intelligent design is actually not a required event whatsoever if a deity can just snap himself into existence. Because if that's true, then a planet forming can easily churn together the right chemicals for life to spontaneously evolve upon that planet. So essentially, I took away God for everyone. Unless, of course, you worship or follow, I should say, a God that admits to being an alien, or that, of course, this planet isn't their creation, but here before them. If you have one of those deities, then of course that doesn't really apply to them, because they are literally admitting that they are creatures from another planet, or at the very least that they had evolved after this planet was created, right? So therefore, proving my point. Now, of course, being that I took away your guys' God figure, if that was your God figure, of course, I'm not assuming. I'm just, theorizing, because I can't assume for everyone's dispositions in the audience, obviously. That would take all day. Anyhow, I thought the kind and responsible thing to do would be to give you back your God. Excuse me. Before I get into that, I want to show my expertise here. I don't have degrees or anything like that, of course. However, I was in the hospital for 2 weeks after my birth because of the fact that I had what they call a traumatic birth. You see, my mother's heart would stop for 5 minutes, then her heart would start, and they could not find mine for 5 minutes. They'd find mine, then hers would stop for 5 minutes. Now, of course, for everybody who wants to say, well, baby heartbeats are notoriously hard to keep track of because you have to wrap the monitor around mama's belly and while you're giving birth, blah, 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 blah. Yes, I know, I have 3 kids. I went through it myself. However, moms, not so much. And the fact that I had to be revived at birth kind of signals that my heart really was doing that. Not to mention the fact that I live with a heart murmur every day of my life, which may or may not crop up each and every day. Some months it has been multiple times every day, in fact, a whole 24 hours to my knowledge of said day. Sometimes it's been months since the last time I've had one. Just all depends. It goes along with my poor circulation and everything else, honestly. I also have the experience of being someone who had suffered from early childhood abuse. This early childhood abuse started when I was 2 weeks old. Now, 2 weeks old is right there while you're supposed to be creating a sense of self. It helps if I actually enunciate all my words, doesn't it? However, of course, 2 weeks into it is very early in the process. And much like puberty blockers, once you start to block that process, unfortunately, that process will not restart. I know I've tried to get it to fully go through, but you have to have the experiences to actually go with it. You see, the sense of self process starts in utero. It starts when you are created enough that your brain is functioning, that you have a limited consciousness, which essentially means that you are there, you are exploring your limbs, your fingers, everything, right? And trying to figure out how this thing works. In fact, they believe that that's part of what alien abductions can sometimes be, especially when these alien abductions are found out about through hypnotherapy. You see, they believe that there is a mirror image of a fetus, even as early as a zygote, really, inside the womb. And so when you see this reflection, it looks something pretty similar to what the grays are supposed to look like. So, that is the earliest form of consciousness. Now, before I go any further, before I hear anything from anybody, I need to let you all know I am pro-choice, despite early consciousness. You see, until that fetus is actually viable on its own, it is solely reliant upon its mother's body. Its mother's health, therefore, must be paramount. And especially in cases where the mother's health will be damaged in some way by carrying this offspring, especially if she has to give up her own life to do so. She has the right to choose, because it is her life. Until the fetus is viable outside of the womb, that fetus is not alive. It is a half-life, if you will. That being said, of course, you are in utero when you are first making your concept of who you actually are. And in this, of course, you are most likely to believe that you are an absolute omnipotent deity, because you feel you need nourishment, and then suddenly nourishment arrives. You feel waste needing to be removed, and suddenly waste is removed. All of these things happen within the speed of thought, you see. So, of course, assumably, you are in full deity mode. Now, of course, when you're born, you see everything is very, very blurry. Yes, things get cold. Yes, for some of us, things get painful. But still, for the most part, you get your needs met. It's not as instantaneous as it used to be. You need to figure out a way to make sound and or communicate your needs. But in that, there are entities all around you seemingly ready to meet said needs. Now, of course, in cases of people like me, we didn't always learn that our needs were going to be met. So some newborns like me didn't cry out as much as we should when we needed things, because of the fact that sometimes when we cried out for our needs, we were met with pain instead of satiation. However, through this satiation, we learned that there are actually real entities. These aren't just some spirits, blobs wandering around and giving us things that may or may not be what we wanted, but eventually become everything we want every time we cry. No, we start to sharpen our focus, and we start to realize that when we see ourselves in things like mirrors, and when we see these entities, they look very similar to us. We start to realize that there's a familial bond there, not just that these entities are serving us. And then as we learn throughout our years, especially our schooling years, we start to become more and more members of our community. Now, of course, as you can tell, during that process, you are your own deity. You are what I like to call your inner God. Or your personal God, or your first God. Those are the three things I like to call that. Now, many times, especially in modern society, we are taught to be effective members of society by decentering us and recentering another deity. And then under that deity, authority figures, presidents, policemen, all of that. We almost seek to erase the inner deity altogether of every child who learns. Now, of course, there is the effect that tunes them into the idea of the world around them. Yes. However, the way we do it, there is also the effect of radical self-abandonment. In fact, I made this exact patch for that very reason, to remind me that radical self-abandonment is a form of self-abuse. You see, radical self-abandonment means you are willing to put all of your energy, your resources, your time, your effort into someone else because you feel like they're more important than you. And instead of going ahead and making sure that you are centered at least sometimes so that you can recoup, so that you can re-give, most of us who have been in abusive situations and decentered personally instead go to radical abandonment, where we will give people everything. We will give people our all. We will let people abuse us as long as they still say they love us. Now, of course, we all have control over that. Because of our inner God, we have control over all of it. Of course, we cannot control someone else's reactions. We cannot control the cycles of Gaia. We can predict the cycles of Gaia because we can study and understand. We can do the same with people around us, creatures around us. But when it comes to literally abandoning ourselves, I am talking about the type of person who sometimes becomes that person who will defend their abuser until their abuser ends their life, in many cases. Now, of course, I've never had a perfect relationship. I've had relationships that need work. But radical self-abandonment says, okay, we both need work. Maybe he'll just work on it on his own, and I don't have to say anything to him because he'll see that he's hurting me, and he'll figure out how he's hurting me, and then he'll figure out how to fix that. No, not a single person other than you is guaranteed to notice what you're going through. And in fact, sometimes you're not even, especially if you've decentered yourself and not recentered yourself, you are likely to not even notice your own pain. So, today, this week, I'm choosing to give you guys back God, but tell you the truth about it, because you are your original God. This is an important thing to remember. It's an important thing to internalize. The whole reason why we need to internalize it is because of the fact that the only way we ensure our protection, ensure that we do not sacrifice ourselves, our health, our resources, whether we can get them back or not, just because. Because you see, Radical abandonment of oneself makes one extremely vulnerable to leeches and pilot fish and every other number of things that might follow you, so that they can get the rest of yours, some scrap here and some non-scrap here, and oh, I see you got this new car, let me ride in it for a while without paying for gas or anything. Especially if these are the type of people who are willing to abandon you when you have nothing left to give. So, in this video, I am asking for you to meditate on the possibility that you, in fact, are what you see as God. Perhaps it's time to check in on yourself. And if you find yourself in a position where people are using you a lot, where you don't feel like you have the right to speak up, and things like that, it's time to seek to see if you have a damaged relationship with your inner God. Now, I know a lot of people will tell me that this is sacrilege, and you know what? If you think it's sacrilege, that's fine. I hope you have a wonderful day, and if you come to these conclusions yourself, don't beat yourself up too hard for not listening. Most people don't. Honestly, I've been giving this kind of advice my entire life, and most people don't. But even if you have been railing against me in this video, you've been screaming to your rooftop till your fucking throat is raw, till your heart feels like it's about to give out that I am absolutely wrong. First off, research. I know plenty of spiritualists will say, well, I do my research by praying to God and asking if it's true. But in this case, I think maybe the answer is not necessarily talking to God, but reaching inside yourself and seeing what God looks like in there. If it looks like a hairy old man, looks like a white hairy old man, especially if you don't fit any of those traits, ask why you're not in God's image. Because all thoughts on God should be in your image. Because you are your inner God. And if God created you in his image, your image of God would be the image of you. Because God created you in his image. Therefore, you would see yourself because he looks like you. And also, and I mean this especially for the people who made it this far and are railing against me. Actually, I more especially mean it for the people who didn't even make it this far. Who really was like, oh, this crazy crap, I'm not going to listen to this bullshit. Especially for you guys, even though you'll never see it. It doesn't matter who you are. I love you. Take care of each other. And I'll see you guys in the next one.